I hope. Is this working? Yes. I have to ask, because I'm traveling right now. I'm not in the normal studio, but we got a big show today. Thank you for your patience as more and more news has just been coming in. It's like we're all ready to go. And then there's another story and another story and another story. Anyway, we're waiting on the JFK files. Schumer. Gosh, Chuck Schumer, you don't want to be Chuck Schumer right now. He's out like making the media rounds, pleading right for his job, if you would. But, I don't think it's going to work. I think that Oprah and I think Whoopi have already kind of dug in, and it's like game over. He's in the middle of some kind of coup, shall we call it, some kind of coup. Chuck Schumer's days are limited. An NBC reporter may be out, kind of an important one. The Treasury Secretary of the United States made a very sort of veiled threat, and I think he was joking. I know he was probably joking, but you know what? There may be some there. So we're going to get into it. I'll show you what he said. But, before we get to any of this, keep in mind what we're waiting on.
They've been waiting for that for decades. Then I said during the campaign I'd do it, and I'm a man of my word. So tomorrow you have the JFK files. What time will they be released? Tomorrow afternoon. Okay.
And here I am. So the President of the United States promising that this would be the day. It would be happening today. He also gave us a little tease, as only he can, about how we'd be pretty interested in what's there.
It's going to be very interesting.
Was there an executive summary supplied to you, Mr. President?
No, I'm not doing summaries. You'll write your own summaries. It's many pages. Is it 80,000 pages? Approximately 80,000 pages. So it's a lot of stuff. And you'll make your own determination.
Yes, we shall. We're going to make our own determination because we're going to get to it. But again, just before we do, keep in mind the little breadcrumbs they've been throwing out there.
American people will have their hands on these documents, and there will be a story to tell. I won't preview that story, but let me tell you, the American people are truly going to be shocked at what they see.
Okay, we're waiting. All right, we're waiting. 80,000 pages. Don't know as I can make it through all of those tonight, but you never know. I can speed read when needed. Good to have you guys here. Watch out, Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, I think this may be game over. It may be time to exit, as they say. Well, in your case, stage left, because you're not going right. So stage left. Chuck Schumer is done. Finally. And now they're kind of putting the screws to him, as they say. One Gayle King over at CBS News, that would be the bestie of Oprah Winfrey, just kind of laid it all out there right to his face, looking him straight in the eye and saying, buddy, everybody wants you gone. You wonder, did Oprah coach her at all on that? Take a peek.
In your own party, they were saying, look, it's time for you to go. They no longer trust your leadership. They want somebody else in there. What do you say about that?
Here's what I say.
In your own party saying
yes.
You've got to go.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm the best leader for the Senate. We have a lot of leaders. When you don't have a president, there's not one leader of the party. There are lots of them. We have a lot of good people. But I am the best at keep winning Senate seats. I've done it in 2005. Just in 2020, no one thought we'd take back the Senate. Under my leadership, we took it. So we now are executing.
You're not going anywhere.
We have a great. We're moving forward. Hakeem and I have a plan. Let me just say this. There's a real contrast between the parties. The Republican Party now, particularly in office, is the party of rich oligarchs who want to really screw every average American so they can get tax cuts for the rich. And we are fighting that every day. So today, we just issued a statement at 8 o'clock that describes it. Hakeem and I, we have a day of action on Medicaid. In every state, in every corner of the country, Democrats are talking about they're going to Medicaid centers. They're going to people who would be deprived and
Senator, people don't have faith in the Democrats.
Well, let me say this. Look, and we're going to do this day in, day out on issues. Why are they doing tariffs and raising your cost $2,000? It's beginning to work. Why are they taking away Fannie and Freddie and raising your housing costs dramatically? It's beginning to work. His numbers have come down. If we keep at it every day, relentless fighting and showing how they're hurting people so badly, Trump's numbers will get much lower, and his both popularity but also his effectiveness will decline. That, I believe that strategy will work.
Except that it won't, because you see there's this little thing called reality. Have you seen the latest inflation numbers? Inflation's coming down. We see that in producer price indexes numbers. We see it in the consumer price index number. You're even seeing manufacturing data that came out today showing this resurgence in manufacturing. What do you know? I mean, you'd think, right? Because common sort of economic thought would be that tariffs would raise the cost on everything. So how is it that all of a sudden you're seeing this upturn in American manufacturing? Literally, the data out today. So Chuck Schumer, like, this is going to be hard for you. And I think they're looking at you and saying, okay, you can tell us you have a plan all you want, but you really don't, because these guys are that much more talented on the Trump side than you. They are so much more charismatic than you. When your message is, we just want to tax you more, as you just saw there, that's not really going to play in Peoria, as they say. And so the Democrats, they've just totally lost the story. I mean, and then it was almost like everybody was on cue. You had Whoopi's little team there all lined up on The View. So first of all, he went over to see Oprah's bestie in hopes that she might give him some runway, and she didn't really. And then he goes over to see Whoopi's friends on The View, and her little team of gals there all of a sudden comes up with the same darn question. If you would, let's watch.
You mentioned, this is what a leader does. And we were just talking in our last segment about we aren't seeing a clear leader of the party, because even though I agree with you with your decision, and I see why, but you were only able to get 9 Democrats to go with you. How is that leadership?
Why?
Okay. Look, the bottom line is there were a whole lot of Democrats who were torn, and they on the one hand, people were clamoring, do something now, do something now. Now, do we have to act, and do we have to fight these Republicans, this right-wing group,
the MAGA.
Not all
The MAGA. You heard the little dig in there. Okay. I mean, they've lost. And they lost spectacularly. There's a brand new study out. I was going to show you later, but, maybe I'd cut to the chase and show you right now. This brand new study that shows how actually, if all the Democrats that could have come out to vote actually did come out to vote, Donald Trump would have won by an even larger margin. Here we go. Okay, so the turnout was low among Democrat voters. But if they'd all come out to vote, then he actually would have managed to win by 5 points instead of just 1.7 points. So the whole idea that you need to turn up the temperature and mobilize everyone's strategy, they say that actually would have made it worse. This is by a Democrat data guru, a guy named David Shore, who did the report. Here you go. Vox actually had a story on it today. This is Blue Rose Research. And look at this. Okay, so if they had actually all voted, then Trump would have had a much larger margin, because like I said, they've lost everyone. It's like they need to go back and watch the Costanza episode of Seinfeld, because in that one, remember, he just decided to do the opposite of whatever George Costanza was like, okay, I'm going to do the opposite day. If I think I'm going to do this, instead I'm going to do that. And that's sort of where the Democrats are right now, because everything they want to do, they really, really have been failing on. And it's so bad that he's out there getting attacked to his face on The View. It takes a lot for them to do. He's getting attacked by Oprah's bestie on CBS, Gayle King. And then over at MSNBC, they're having this just come to Jesus kind of moment where they're pontificating about the future of the party. And why is it that nobody sort of is a leader, that nobody can stand up and fire back with quote unquote facts? Well, their facts turned out not to be facts, right? That was the moral of the story for 8 years. They sat there and lied to us over and over and over and over again. Heck, now even the New York Times is coming out with a mea culpa sort of on the scientific community, right? They ran that column the other day about how everybody was duped in March 2020 and the following months by the scientific community, the deep state that wanted you to think one thing when it was another. And now finally, we all know where the virus came from. Wuhan, China. I knew that in February of 2020. Why? Because I'm a reporter and I got sources. But you know what? They don't allow that. Or they didn't allow that, right? For so long. Reminder to subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff here. But this is why the Democrat Party is failing so badly. They just came out with a new approval rating, and it's the lowest popularity it's ever been at. Well, you got to go back to ever since its inception. So they've never seen numbers quite like this. And that's why MSNBC is sitting around every morning saying, well, what's the future? What's the future? Well, it's not Chucky.
Who is that person?
That's the question.
Well,
because it's not going to be founded from the legislative, the branch of the Senate or the House of Representatives. They're not fixed to pick an outside spokesman. Schumer's not an outside spokesman. Hakeem Jeffries turns out not to be an outside spokesman. So somebody has to come up. Chris Murphy's tried to do it, but he doesn't have the stature or the authority to do it. He's just another senator.
Who to judge? He's got the skills.
Maybe, but he's running for president. He is running for president.
Oh, but that maybe.
Well, I mean, I think that's a fact. I don't know why they haven't put together a group and said, you guys, you people, speak for the party. Get out there and do that. I mean, I agree with you on Schumer. The Schumer question is a small part of this.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you talk to people on the very progressive side of the Senate, they'll tell you it's a close call.
It's a close call.
And by the way, if we're sitting here 2 months after the government shut down and it's all being blamed on Democrats, the numbers will even be lower than we just saw.
That's why I
Okay,
agree.
so Schumer, you're in trouble. Schumer, you are in trouble. We're going to go back to that in a little bit because it's not just Schumer that's in trouble. It's AOC that's in trouble. It's the entire darn party. You know, it's kind of funny. Just saying. I mean, right? Like, we're sort of like, well, we told you so. We told you so. We told you so. I mean, gosh, guys, you know, if any Democrats would take the time to watch my show, they have learned a lot. Actually, a lot. Because I warned them years ago not to run Biden, not to run Kamala. I said, you might want to take a look at that little whippersnapper. I mean, I know we don't like him. He's got a new podcast and everything. That guy out in California with the slick back hair, one Gavin Newsom. Now, he did a terrible job with California, but he's a formidable opponent. He's an opponent. But if they, you know, they actually could get their head around it. Instead, they're out there spitting him up and chewing him out on The View, literally. Like, so mad because he had Steve Bannon on his show. For goodness sakes. Guys, you know what? You ought to be paying a little more attention to Steve Bannon and some of the working class issues that he cares about. Some of the issues that Trish Regan cares about, as opposed to getting stuck off in your la-la land. Because look at what just happened. The country went the other way. They're not with you.
First of all, the mood of the country, this really jumped out. We asked folks, is it on the right direction or the wrong direction? That 44% you say right direction, that's up since November. And if that doesn't seem like a lot, the last time it cracked 40%, you got to go back to 2012. The last time it actually hit 44 or higher, January of 2004. So a lot of this is Republicans, but independents, that number is also up since the election on the direction of the country.
Because things are getting better. I mean, we just got news just now. The astronauts have returned to Earth. For goodness sakes, Elon told us that Biden wouldn't let them. They wouldn't let them rescue the astronauts from the space station. They were stuck there for 6 months. So, you know, the Democrat Party is so stuck on all this ridiculous sort of nonsense. And now it's like class warfare all over again. I'm sorry, you know what? MAGA won that. Loud and clear. So Chuck Schumer, you can sit there and tell us that we shouldn't pay any more, you know, or we should be paying more taxes. I think people are going to keep telling you, Chucky, we don't want to pay more. You know what? We actually work hard and we want to keep most of our money, and we don't want $2 million a year going to use for transgender studies in Peru. I mean, is that too much to ask?
And you know what their attitude is? I made my money all by myself. How dare your government take my money from me? I don't want to pay taxes. Or, I built my company with my bare hands. How dare your government tell me how I should treat my customers, my the land and water that I own, or my employees? They hate government. Government's a barrier to people. A barrier to stop them from doing things. They want to destroy it. We are not letting them do it, and we're united.
Okay.
Good.
It's like Whoopi's trying to get him off there. She's like, you're just digging yourself in further on this. Like, this doesn't play. It doesn't resonate. When you keep telling Americans, you got to pay more, you got to pay more. I don't care that you worked hard to build that business. We got to give money to the DEI musical in Ireland. and the transgender opera in Colombia. Unbelievable, right, guys? And now you get another judge trying to say that no, you can't dismantle this USAID thing. I think, we'll see how it works out in the courts, all right? That's another discussion. But I'm just going to tell you about the court of public opinion right here, right now. Nobody wants their tax dollars going to these ridiculous USAID efforts, which are only used to prop up the crazy, I could say something else. Did you notice he talked about getting screwed and stuff there? His language has deteriorated along with his entire party. I mean, their language is just atrocious these days, so I'm going to keep it clean. But the point is, we don't want everything that we work for getting used in these crazy, wild schemes to keep them afloat with all their ridiculous ideas on gender, on DEI, this, that, and the other. It's all getting undone in real time. And so we'll see what happens in the courts, but I can tell you the court of public opinion right now, I mean, you're going to see new studies. They have 29% approval rating in the Democrat Party. You're going to see studies that reduce it down to 18 cents approval rating, right? I mean, that's where you're going in a moment like this. Absolutely, for sure. Steve Bolin says, I would nominate Michael Moore for the Democrat Party leader. He's a hot rod, right? And I know that most of my viewers anyway have no use for him and don't like him. But I can tell you this, he actually gets a little bit more of the working class sensibility than these guys ever dreamed of, right? They're just there in their ivory towers. And Donald Trump, in part because I believe he has empathy that simply is not seen from the likes of Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, even AOC. Like, these people just don't get it, and certainly not members of the media. The media, by the way, was completely being supported by those USAID efforts as well. We've discovered all of that. So the idea that Chuck Schumer wants more of that and less opportunity for people to keep and have what they earn tells you everything you need to know. Meanwhile, breaking news right now, Hunter Biden is in more trouble. It turns out that the IRS investigators, those guys that were after him way back in the beginning, and by the way, they weren't political. I mean, the one I'm going to show you here, he was married to a Democrat, is still married to a Democrat, was saying, look, I'm putting everything on my line by coming out here and saying something, but he was investigating the improprieties that Hunter Biden had in his taxes. He hadn't paid like millions of dollars worth of back taxes. And so as they were looking at that, they found a whole bunch of other stuff, and he started sounding the alarm, but he kept getting shut down at every single corner. Remember that? Here he is.
Today, I sit here before you, not as a hero or a victim, but as a whistleblower compelled to disclose the truth. That said, in coming forward, I believe I'm risking my career, my reputation, and my casework outside of the investigation we are here to discuss. I ultimately made the decision to come forward after what I believe were multiple attempts at blowing the whistle in the Internal Revenue Service, at the Internal Revenue Service. No one should be above the law, regardless of your political affiliation.
Right. That's absolutely 1,000% true. And yet it seemed Hunter Biden was way above the law. I know this because I personally ran into this sharing a story on social media. It got blocked for a year. Not here, which we love our friends over here at YouTube, and they've actually been terrific. And it's another reminder to subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. But I'm telling you guys, it was a really tricky world out there for a while. And this was after Biden had become president. But Hunter was like no-go territory. You could not talk about this stuff. And it's like, wait a second. You actually tried to tell us, and then you were keeping up this sham that somehow, even though his laptop was being investigated by the FBI, we weren't allowed to say that this was nothing but misinformation fed to us courtesy of Rudy Giuliani and the Russians. And, when this whistleblower came forward and said some things didn't add up, he's the one suddenly in trouble. Well, you know what's happening today? They're giving him a promotion. We just got a big promotion. Here is Scott Bessent, his new boss at Treasury. And let me just say, this does not bode well for Hunter, because you see the Treasury Department had sent out a bunch of notices to a bunch of banks questioning some of Hunter's transactions, some of his foreign transactions, and that was a big deal at the time. And so there's more information that can be discovered over at Treasury that these guys are hopefully going to get to the bottom of. They were just hired by one Mr. Scott Bessent. Listen to him with my friend Maria here this morning.
The culture of being able to come forward when you see wrongdoing is a central part of our democracy. I saw these two fellows before the president's address to Congress in Speaker Johnson's office. They came over to me and said, you know, sir, we're still being harassed. And I had been in touch with Senator Grassley about what was happening to them, but seeing them in person really brought it home for me. So I went and decided I would bring them into Treasury, give them a year to investigate the wrongdoing that's going on at the IRS, and then they will go back in. Mr. Shapley will serve as the senior deputy for investigations and enforcement. So we'll have them in Treasury. We'll learn what's been going on at the IRS, what's been wrong, how could this Hunter Biden nonsense have happened, and we're going to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone again, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or independents.
Yeah. Okay, so what he's getting at there is some of the bank notices that went out, right? So Treasury knew about this. So who were their contacts over at the IRS? And now Treasury's going to investigate the IRS, and I imagine those guys are going to look back over what was going on with Treasury because they had to issue these notices telling these banks that, you know, particular accounts looked kind of suspicious because he's getting money from here, there, and everywhere. I literally mean it. Romania, he's getting money from Ukraine, money from China, and all, oddly enough, old-fashioned energy companies. So it's like, okay, you can't do any old-fashioned energy drilling or anything like that here in the good old US of A, but you go to China, you go to Romania, you go to Ukraine, and guess who's your buddy that's going to help you work it all out? One Hunter Biden, but never registered as a foreign lobbyist? Does that not strike people as just a little bit odd? Well, it struck the whistleblowers as odd that were trying to investigate at the time, and it was amazing how that thing just got shut down. I mean, I know it again because I'm a member of the media and I saw it getting shut down. But the fact that it was shut down by our so-called deep state is so wrong. But guess what, guys? You know, he was pardoned, but that pardon itself may mean nothing.
We have thousands of murderers that Biden and his incompetency, first of all, he's grossly incompetent, but that Biden and his people and his probably auto pen, it looked like we had an auto pen for a president, and we would have been better off if we had probably. But it looks to me like, you know, that's a big subject. I'm sure you won't ask about that, but the whole subject of auto pen, did he know what he was doing? Did he authorize it? Or is this somebody in an office, maybe a radical left lunatic, just signing whatever that person was? That's not what it's all about. I never use it. I mean, we may use it as an example to send some young person a letter because it's nice, you know, we get thousands and thousands of letters and letters of support for young people, for people that aren't feeling well, etc. But to sign pardons and all of the things that he signed with an auto pen is disgraceful.
Yeah. And as he pointed out, at 12:35, I guess it would be in the morning, yesterday morning, he said the pardons that Sleepy Joe gave to the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by autopen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them. More importantly, he didn't know anything about them. So this is actually kind of a big deal, guys. And I explained some of this yesterday. You can certainly go back and watch yesterday's show. I encourage you to do that. But we got into this because this auto signature thing, this is kind of a mess. This is a really, really big deal. And it's been controversial for years. It came out during the George Bush era. He never used it because he found it so controversial. In fact, he would deliberately fly home if there was anything really big that he had to sign. And it wasn't until Obama, because Obama had to go on his vacations, that he wound up using this auto pen signature. And then, of course, Joe Biden had to use it a lot, because I'm not sure how much work Joe Biden was really doing. I mean, that's our question. That's Trump's question, too. Take a look at that nice little post he put out where it was himself as president, and then for 4 years, the auto pen as president, and then well, himself back with the jail photo from Fulton County, Georgia. Anyway, unbelievable stuff. But think about what Hunter Biden is up against right now. Again, there were a whole bunch of what they call suspicious activity reports about Hunter Biden. There were like 70 of them that the Treasury Department sent out to Hunter's banks. And the question is, like, how is it that it was never ever followed up on? What was the disconnect between the IRS and the Treasury Department? James Comer has talked about this. I have a clip of him. This might have been from a couple of years ago on Ted Cruz's program, and he's explaining how serious a deal this is. And I just think it's going to come back to bite Hunter in the you-know-what.
Two over the course of 10 years.
And how many were issued concerning Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the Biden family?
Over 170. They were direct.
Wait, you were at a bank and they issued 2 in 10
how many years?
If you had 2 SARs, they're called SARs in the banking industry. If you had 2 SARs against you, it would be hard for you to open an account somewhere. There wouldn't be any bank that would want to have you as a customer because it's not worth the paperwork. Remember, when the bank files one of these, you can understand this, appreciate this, Senator. That's inviting the regulators to come in and regulate. Okay, that's the last thing the banks want.
170 get filed. That means that somebody's getting a deposit in their account. It's a big amount. It's from somewhere suspicious. I mean, what triggers it? Why? You're a banker. What is it that makes you say we got to file a SAR?
A large transaction that comes out of the blue. So
and what's large? What is there a threshold?
You had $1 million. I'll use the Robinson Walker account because we subpoenaed. That was the first bank account we subpoenaed.
Now, who's Robinson Walker?
Rob Walker was one of the associates that they used to funnel money from China and Romania and then down and launder it down to the Biden.
So he's a.
Today, I sit here before you not as a hero or
who. Over the course of 10 years.
So think that through. You just saw Comer explain that there were 70 suspicious activity reports. They had all this money that they were potentially laundering. And somehow nobody was doing anything about it at IRS. The IRS whistleblower, he's now been brought over to Treasury. And so, as you heard from the Treasury Secretary himself, they're not going to let this go. So Hunter Biden, he's in a lot of trouble. Now, okay, the pardon thing. Again, I'm just going to say that there's been a ton of controversy about it. I don't think that he's going to be able to hide behind that. I don't think Liz Cheney's going to be able to. I don't think Fauci's going to be able to. I don't think Adam Kinzinger or Adam Schiff are going to be able to hide behind this thing, only because you have to ask yourself, if, for example, Joe Biden was not in a good enough state of mind to actually sit in a court of law and defend himself against all those documents that he took. He admitted that he took them, right? He had all those documents, in my car, next to my Corvette, in my garage. If he wasn't in well enough mind to actually sit and defend himself in that event, then how was he running the country? And how could he possibly have pardoned all of these people, right? Like, that does not make any sense. Gary Hammers, thank you so much. Love from the UK. Love back to you guys. Thank you for the compliments on the work. And thank you for your generosity. Anyway, I do think that they've got themselves in a pickle. The Hunter Biden family, the entire family. This came up in the briefing. And I just want to show you Caroline Levitt. She's pretty darn good. This is no KJP, shall we say, Karine Jean-Pierre. This girl has got it going on, and she knows how to deflect when asked silly questions by one reporter, a CNN reporter, Caitlin Collins. Do you know her? Anyway, take a look at this clip.
Or talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out.
Okay,
Sean.
on the flight, so I have a question on the
You're a reporter. You should find out. Absolutely, you should find out. Instead, I guess these guys, they were doing whatever USAID told them to. Remember how I showed you all the money that Politico was getting before they say, oh, that was going to subscriptions, Politico subscriptions for $8.2 million in an election year. Let me tell you, nobody's paying $10,000 a year for a subscription unless you're on Wall Street. And maybe you pay a little more than that for your Bloomberg terminal and some good hedge fund research. Oh, that's a nifty time for me to just mention 76 Research. I wasn't going to do it just yet, but I might as well, because this subscription will not cost you $10,000 a year. I mean, that's how crazy it is, right? Guys, remember that. Think about what they were doing. So it wasn't just that. You had the New York Times getting like nearly $30 million a year. And it's like, oh, is that why we're doing such positive coverage on one Anthony Fauci now? And that's why we were willing to be deceived? Anyway, 76research.com. Use code word dollar. That's my company. I created it alongside a longtime friend who's brilliant and has been investing for many, many years, including running billions of dollars on Wall Street for many, many years. So I do encourage you to take a look at that. We just actually published a new idea yesterday for all of you. So 76research.com. Use code word dollar. But when you think of what Hunter is now up against, it's going to be pretty significant. And I think in terms of those auto signatures, as much as Caroline Leavitt wants to, as CNN wants to somehow say, well, was this really, he knew what he was doing, so maybe it was fine. I mean, I think Caroline kind of put her in her place pretty darn well. Meanwhile, what's it going to mean in terms, what is it going to mean in terms of his Ukraine business dealings? I mean, that's a big one still, if you would. And it's a big one from my estimation, only because Ukraine hired him to the tune of $63,000 or so a month so that he could provide a kind of protection. I've seen New York Times articles actually, and LA Times articles saying, well, this is what's done. Foreign countries, they often hire members of the administration's family in order to get some protection. Of course, the administration's family would need to, one, register as a foreign lobbyist, and two, these things would need to be disclosed. In the Obama White House, he actually specifically said, because he wanted to guard against this with one Joe Biden, specifically Joe Biden, I don't think he appreciated Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton's CGI, which was raking in billions. I mean, that's a whole other story. And we're going to go there. You know it, because it's all coming out. Anyway, Hunter was running like a little teeny little CGI operation, getting paid up the wazoo by various countries, including Ukraine, for what? Daddy's protection? Dad was in charge of Ukraine policy. Here is Daddy back when he was a little more coherent. You may have to turn up the volume on this, I'm not sure. But he's speaking with Richard Haass at the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, of which I used to be a member. And they're talking about how Biden was able to change everything in Ukraine, including getting rid of a prosecutor they believe to be corrupt. Interestingly enough, the prosecutor that Biden's talking about getting fired happened to be the prosecutor that Burisma, the company Junior was working for, wanted fired because he was conducting an investigation, rightly so, into the now defunct energy company. Let's watch Biden effectively kind of admitting his guilt. There is this little thing called tape.
Or loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. I think it was, 6 hours. I looked at it, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well, they made some genuine, substantial changes institutionally and.
What do you think? Hey, reminder to subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. Hit the bell so you know when I'm here. But I mean, I think there's a lot of there that still has not been, in my estimation, sufficiently addressed, including the 70s SARS reports, suspicious activity reports that Treasury had. And somehow, the IRS investigators, they were not allowed to follow up on things because everything was getting shut down. Why was it getting shut down? Because somebody had access to power. That would be Junior, who had access to Daddy. And then, what do you think those auto signatures were? Again, it's people in power getting what they need and want. And they may not have even been getting it from Joe himself. It may have just been, on speed dial there, whoever's emailing into whoever was running the country for 4 years.
Are those executive orders, those pardons from the president now null and void?
Well, I think so. It's not my decision. That'll be up to a court. But I would say that they're null and void because I'm sure Biden didn't have any idea that it was taking place. And somebody was using an auto pen to sign off and to give pardons to, as an example, just one example, but the J6 Unselect Committee. They gave pardons with an auto pen. I don't think Biden knew anything about it. And what they did is they deleted and destroyed all of the information that took them over a year to get. And the reason they did that is because the information was very incriminating about them. Like Nancy Pelosi was determined conclusively that she knew about 10,000 soldiers and it turned it down. And if we used 500 soldiers, you would have had no problem.
Okay. So his point being that, and I know that's hard to hear a little bit, his point being that there was a lot of corruption going on. And I think we know that. I mean, we've learned of so much. And so when he says those pardons are null and void, I mean, I think, legally, he's going to have something to stand on there. Because if you look at the way the Constitution is written, pardons specifically, but any bill that a president signs, it talks about how it has to be presented in person to the president. There's a whole sort of rigmarole about it if you go back to the Founding Fathers' days. And granted, I know technology changes things, but if you're kind of a purist in how you interpret the Constitution, you would expect then that somebody would have to actually do these things in person, right? Meanwhile, we've got new intel coming to us on the judge that is trying to prevent all these deportations from happening with the use of the Aliens Enemy Act of 1796. There are some interesting elements that we're learning about him right now. How's that for a tease? I'm going to quickly sneak in a little ad for our friends over at American Heart for Gold because we love them. Yes, I love gold. Somebody said in the comments, Trish loves gold. I do love gold. It was up today, so I didn't buy. But whenever it goes down, I try to get in. It's nearing $3,000 an ounce. It's something that I'm a long-term believer in, that I hold forever, basically. And sometimes people say to me, well, what percentage of my portfolio should I have in gold? I think it's all up to you. At some point, like if gold prices were to go up that much that it becomes sort of totally out of whack with the rest of my portfolio, then I might diversify, but we're not there yet. In fact, if anything, I just wish I owned more gold. So trishlovesgold.com is the website you can go to. You can text my name, Trish, to 65532 or call them at 1-844-495-1115. And this is a special offer for fans of the Trish Regan Show. You get up to $15,000 in free silver with qualifying offers. So that's a good thing to check out. Again, text Trish to 65532. New intel out today on this Aliens Enemy Act of 1798 being used to deport illegal criminals with a judge in the way of all of it. Donald Trump making it very clear on Air Force One over the weekend that this is a time of war, and therefore the Aliens Enemy Act of 1798 applies, because these are effectively war criminals, terrorists, whatever you want to call them. He outlined it here. Again, it's going to escalate in the court of law for sure, but he's kind of moving first and asking questions later, which is a smart thing to do, and they do it in business. And don't sit there and tell me that Joe Biden didn't do the exact same thing with a whole bunch of stuff. It's just that Donald Trump's being smarter about it, and he's got the people on his side, right? Here he is talking about this being a time of war.
Criticism that the Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 other times. They were all during times of war. Do you feel that you're using it appropriately right now?
Well, this is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level, They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals. Murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war.
Yes, right? In that sense, it totally, absolutely, positively is war. And so, we're facing a new kind of enemy. Can we not use an old kind of law to apply? Anyway, this James Boasberg, he temporarily blocked these deportations. Of course, the plane was already in the air over international law space, so that didn't really work out so well for him. Anyway, he temporarily blocked this, saying that they needed to return these people to the United States. And, let's just say that didn't happen. In fact, the president of El Salvador was like within minutes tweeting out sort of like, too bad, right? They're here already. So because they were in international space, it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. As for what's going to happen going forward, we'll see. But I will tell you what's coming out right now on Twitter. So Sean Davis's account, he's writing that John Roberts personally placed James Boasberg on the FISA court that rubber-stamped illegal spy warrants against Donald Trump. Now, I should point out that John Roberts, it has come out on the Supreme Court level and criticized the critique that, say, Elon Musk and a member of Congress, Brandon Gill, and even the president are issuing against this particular James Boasberg. And Sean Davis is pointing out that perhaps one of the reasons why Boasberg is trying to sort of, or rather Roberts is trying to protect Boasberg is because he's sort of his guy, right? Like he put him there on the court, and so his own credibility is perhaps at stake, and so that's why you're seeing this. But I will say this, this Boasberg is also under fire because it seems that he kind of let them off easy with the former FBI lawyer. Remember the FBI lawyer who never actually filled out the proper paperwork, but instead forged some things in order to get a FISA warrant? Well, this judge was really easy on him. Look at this. He let him plead guilty to something that should have been jail time, but didn't give him jail time. You know the whole Carter page, Russia, where it all originated, and they got the FISA warrant, and what's his name, Comey was all happy. Well, this same judge is the one that actually was in charge of sentencing Kevin Kleinsmith, and he gave him probation, not jail time. And he kind of went easy on him. And so the New York Post has a big story on his own bias there. He did order him to serve 12 months of probation, 400 hours of community service. But, look, the guy's like forging records in order to get FISA warrants on a presidential candidate. That doesn't exactly seem very American, right? It doesn't. So Boasberg, he's in a lot of trouble now. The New York Post also points out that he's not entirely predictable, that actually when they were trying to get Donald Trump's tax records, he didn't let them do that. So we'll see how this all shakes out, but it's getting ornery, and I expect that it's going to get more and more ornery and more sort of difficult on both sides. But you've got a team there in the White House that is not going to stop, right? They're dedicated to just moving forward. I'll also say this, and this is courtesy of Laura Loomer, who you guys may know. She's been on the show before. She's been doing a lot of reporting, sort of looking at the background on judges, and he does have a daughter, according to Laura, that works for an NGO that provides legal services to illegals, including MS-13 members, and it's funded by government grants, including U.S. aid. So, funny how it all ties back together, right? Does that influence his bias there? Possibly. He's trying to say, okay, we got to stop it right now. Now, what happens? Like, this becomes a very difficult story, if you would, for the left that's fighting it. It's sort of like brilliant politics or brilliant chess, because the White House's response to this lawyer, Boasberg, is that the administration did not refuse to comply with a court order, that the order had no lawful basis because it was issued after the terrorist aliens had already been removed from the country. This is according to Caroline Levitt. She writes, a single judge in a single city cannot direct the movements of an aircraft carrier full of foreign alien terrorists who were physically expelled from U.S. soil. And then you had Stephen Miller, who's spent a lot of time studying this stuff and is pretty well schooled as a lawyer on it, speaking on CNN here, defending again the White House's move in this migrant criminal crisis. I want to show you this clip.
So you called the judge's order just earlier today, quote, patently unlawful, end quote, and said that it was an assault on democracy itself. Does that mean that the administration is ignoring this order, and might you ignore future court orders that meet the criteria you laid out?
The President of the United States and his administration reserve all rights under the Constitution to conduct national security operations in defense of the United States. The Alien Enemies Act, which was passed into law by the founding generation of this country, men like John Adams, was written explicitly to give the President the authority to repel an alien invasion of the United States. That is not something that a district court judge has any authority whatsoever to interfere with, to enjoin, to restrict, or to restrain any way. You can read the law yourself. There's not one clause in that law that makes it subject to judicial review, let alone district court review.
So, Stephen, when you say that this person has no authority at all, this is how our system works. It starts with these judges and then continues up. At what point does it become, in your view, legal for the justice system to be looking at this and making a judgment? And I fail to see how there's any other way but to start with where we're starting here before you get to eventually the Supreme Court.
Well, so first of all, there's a term in law, justiciable. This is not justiciable. In other words, this is not subject to judicial remedy. When the President is exercising his Article 2 powers to defend the country against an invasion or to repel a foreign terrorist that is unlawfully in the country, he's exercising his core Article 2 powers as Commander-in-Chief.
Is Venezuela invading the U.S.?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm going to tell the team we shouldn't have cut it there, right? He would say that yes, that these particular gang members are actually invading the U.S. and you have to actually do something about that. And, you know, let's face it, Venezuela's not really our friend, right? So it's kind of, you know, I think on some rather solid legal ground. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to purport to be, but let me tell you, all right, in the court of public opinion, it's definitely on solid ground because nobody, hey, even Whoopi Goldberg the other day admitted, I don't want criminals, like I'm fine with exporting the criminals. So now they're stuck here saying they want to keep the criminals. And the White House is like, well, we don't care what you want because these guys are bad guys. Here's Tom
Another flight. Another flight every day. The teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to the American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
Yeah. I just love seeing you going through these protesters just crunching.
Right? I mean, he's like, we're doing it, and we're not going to stop. So in the meantime, consider the other side. So Democrats are like, I mean, I showed you this the other day. Yesterday, in fact. All the days are kind of blending together. That's what happens when you're on the road, right? Anyway, I showed you yesterday how you had an MSNBC reporter saying, well, how are you going to defend Venezuelans that are here illegally, da-da-da. The media is on the wrong side, again, of the issue. And it's like manna from heaven for the MAGA team. I mean, like, you can't make it up because they keep sort of, you know, I get their point. They want to get mired down in the law, but this is, once again, in the court of public opinion, not really sellable. Check this discussion out, if you can call it that, between one anchor and a Republican congressman on CNN earlier today. And I think you get the point.
Well, but so no matter what a judge
and he's
says,
taking the side, and he's taking the side of a bunch of criminals.
He hasn't taken any. He hasn't taken any side yet, Congressman. He hasn't taken any side yet. All he's done is put a stay on the White House action here so that he can review their use of their novel use, frankly, of the Alien Enemies
Oh, come on.
Act.
These guys, listen, these guys, the difference between God and these judges is God knows he's not one of these judges. They're arrogant. They practice this type of thing all the time. And if you had a conservative one doing it, you all would be raising total hell. But because it's a left-winger
Congressman,
and it's CNN, and you all take that side.
This isn't a question about the media. This isn't a question about the media. No one's taking a side here. Congressman,
yes,
no
you
one's
are.
taking a side here.
He is not.
I'm asking you about the Constitution. Is asking about the Constitution. Is asking about the Constitution. Taking a side. All I'm asking you is about the Constitution, what you think of it, and what you would advise this White House and your feeling about judicial rulings. And that seems to be upsetting you. I'm just trying to get your position on this and what you would advise the White House going forward.
It's not upsetting. I guess what upsets me is that you all at CNN continuously take the side of the far left, and that's why your ratings continue to plummet. And I do not ever understand why y'all do that. Every time. I know you got to take the opposite side on everything, but you all are wrong on this one. Listen, this is a gang that took over an apartment complex in Colorado. They murdered people. They are criminals.
We're trying to understand. Now, you can argue. You can argue. You can, Congressman,
what is wrong with you all? You are so out of touch with what's 85% of this country does not support what you are spewing out right now.
We haven't spewed. The only one spewing is the guy who's talking uninterrupted right now.
How long does it take him to review this stuff? How long does it take him to review this stuff? These judges, he'll sit on his ass for months so these criminals can stay in this country. This is all this is. This is overreach. And I'll guarantee you, if his kids had been murdered or raped, as has happened in this country to several American citizens by these thugs, that he would be taking a different position. But he's protected. You all protect him. You all have got to come off this. Seriously, I don't know how you all sleep at night. When you protect criminals, murderers,
Congressman,
and
can I ask you to stop for 1 second here? I think if you go through and analyze the questions.
Yeah, if you go through and analyze the questions, you're still going to come back to this idea that you can't really be stuck there defending the criminals, which I was just going to respond to Spirit-Filled. And again, thank you for the generosity. It is great to have you here on the program again. It's exactly why Democrats are suffering with really, really bad popularity ratings, because Americans see them as not representing them and their values anymore. And that's really, really being driven home over and over and over again. Meanwhile, you've actually got some good things going on. I mean, you've got inflation abating, right? It's CPI, PPI, way lower than expected. That's pretty good. PPI was unchanged the other day. You had CPI, that's producer prices, consumer prices up 2.8% since last year, but came in much lower than expected. And so the trajectory is a good one. On top of it, the good news keeps coming. We just heard that Russia has agreed to a ceasefire on some of the energy facilities in Ukraine. That just came out today. That's really good news. You've got the astronauts returning to Earth today. That's really, really, really good news. So a lot of things are going right, which is why this sort of interesting segment happened on FBN this morning, a network I used to work for, where the Treasury Secretary was talking about all the great things that are going on in the economy. And he's right, there's a lot of good stuff. But he was asked the other day by an NBC reporter, hey, can you guarantee that there's not going to be a recession? And by the way, the question is just kind of dumb, and I'm going to be catty for a moment, but I'm just going to tell you, as a business reporter, there are other ways to ask the question, but you can't ever guarantee that there's not going to be a recession, right? That's just a silly question to ask. But that's what one Kristen Welker, she's the new one at Meet the Press. I guess she took over for Chuck Todd, because they're all dropping like flies. Don't forget, networks are changing by the day, by the minute. And so the old guy's out, this Kristen is in, and she asks a dumb question because she doesn't know her stuff when it comes to the economy. She probably should have gone to CNBC and said, hey, can you help me with some questions here? You know, when I was at CNBC, Brian Williams would often do that. Hey, I got the Treasury Secretary coming on. Any good economic questions you can send my way. Well, maybe they're just not so good at CNBC anymore. I don't know who gave her this question, but it was a stupid one, a really, really, really stupid one. And it actually got turned around on her with kind of a big warning, effectively being thrown at her by one Scott Besson today on Maria's show. Let's take a listen.
Sure. The other day you were asked a question by another outlet. Can you guarantee that we're not going to have a recession? And you wanted to address that this morning.
Yeah, well, look, it was a silly question. Can you guarantee there's not going to be a recession? I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee that the journalist who asked me the question that her news program is going to be on in a year. But what I can guarantee you is that there is no reason we need to have a recession. I think that there's the economy in the first quarter is doing better than the media is reporting. I think we're seeing some very good underlying data from credit card companies, from banks. I think that the airlines, which reported some bad passenger numbers, a big amount of that is from federal employees who are not flying right now. So the underlying economy is healthy.
Oops, that wasn't the one I wanted. Oh, we have to put, well, the underlying economy is healthy. Did he say that I can't guarantee it? That I can't guarantee that she's going to have a job? Did I miss that? I was noticing what's going on with the astronauts, and I want to bring you that video too. Okay, as I get the astronaut video, this is called live TV. We're going to listen again and make sure that he gave her that warning.
Sure. The other day you were asked a question by another outlet. Can you guarantee that we're not going to have a recession? And you wanted to address that this morning.
Yeah, well, look, it was a silly question. Can you guarantee there's not going to be a recession? I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee that the journalist who asked me the question that her news program is going to be on in a year. But what I can guarantee you is that there is no reason we need to have a recession. I think that there's the economy in the first quarter is doing better than the media is reporting. I think we're seeing some very good underlying data from credit card companies, from banks.
And there we go, right? So that was it. That was it. That was basically the Treasury Secretary sending quite a veiled warning, if you would. Look, I mean, she may not be there. In all seriousness, she may not be there because what's happening in real time is that you have a Treasury Secretary, not even Treasury Secretary, an FCC Secretary that is requiring networks to actually be unbiased. Imagine that. And, they're going to say, oh, this is infringing on our rights. No, it's not. You guys have just been like 99% negative coverage for one person and super positive for the other. But I did promise you the astronauts, and this is just tremendous footage coming into us right now. Those NASA astronauts that had been stranded, I mean, for what, 8 months? They're now coming back to Earth. I want to show you.
And we're going to stand by for splashdown located in the Gulf of America off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
Okay, so just incredible. We're going to change our lower
and
third
splashdown. Crew 9 back on Earth.
Astronauts to Earth. I mean, can you imagine what that must have been like for them? You think about that. Freedom stuck up there for
good main release.
8 months.
Copy splashdown. We see main shoots cut.
Story. And what's
Nick,
crazy
Alex,
is that Elon
Butch, Sunny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
And that was not appreciated, I guess, by the White House, or at least they said not until after the election, because they couldn't let it look as though
what a ride.
and Trump were getting some kind of win. And when it comes down to stuff like that,
And we're going to stand by for splashdown located in the Gulf of America off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
Now, I mean, it's been, I can't even imagine the level of stress and the PTSD effectively, but
and
good job.
splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
Good job really quite a special moment with the splashdown, if you would, for Crew 9. Just wonderful news that we're seeing coming into us right now.
Good main release.
You know,
Copy splashdown. We see main shoots cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Sonny, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
To do this, and he was told no. You have to wait till after the election. And it's just sad because these are people's
an amazing
lives. These are
what a
people's
ride.
lives at
I
stake,
see a capsule full of grins ear to ear.
effectively sacrifice them.
And we're going to stand by for splashdown located in the Gulf of America off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
Show the other day. Look, it's just nice that they are finally down from the ISS. And they are here back on Earth.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
The media is trying to reinvent, I guess, their party right now that they are historically aligned with and have been, I guess, going back to the Vietnam War days. So much so that Mika Brzezinski, who hosts that morning show with her husband on MSNBC, you know, that really well-rated, I'm being facetious, terrible show. It's kind of, you know, really, like, they're lucky if they get 800 people tuning in. Anyway, she now, though, seems to be going after a new target. And at first I thought it was this woman.
My show had value, and that, I'm sorry.
There should be an exciting...
But no, it's actually, I suspect, a few others. You know, as they try to remake the Democrat Party, it means they got to rid themselves of very emotional folks. At least that's what I heard. And some of you guys heard this yesterday. So I want to play this very quick clip of Mika seemingly not just taking a shot at someone like Joy Reid, but even AOC.
There should be an exciting construct in which they push back on facts. On facts. Just stick to the facts. I don't want to hear your feelings, especially from far left-wing Democrats. I don't want to hear laughing or, you know, derisive laughter. I don't want to hear anything except the facts and where the Republican Party...
You were so right about that.
I don't want to hear your feelings.
The derisive laughter, the way you use laughter to insinuate an attack.
No.
And you don't even laugh.
Right? So what was that really about? She's like on the verge of tears. She's saying, oh my gosh, you know, we can't have anybody on the verge of tears. But I think that was actually a bit of a dig at one AOC, who's often on the verge of tears.
Well, we are on the eve of an authoritarian administration. This is what 21st century fascism is starting to look like.
Yeah. Greg Robertson writing in about how this is forever going to be Elon's moment, and he deserves credit for this. And I agree with you on the astronauts, Greg, and I appreciate the generosity. Totally agree. So, you know, I get it. Like, you know, you really don't want a party filled with people like this.
You know, I do think that several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy, because that is a part of what happened here. And we're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something that we're looking into.
Oh my gosh. Like, you didn't look into it enough for 4 years? Hey, maybe Mika's worried she's targeting her. I'm teasing. You know who she's targeting. yours truly and others like me, because they have their version of the truth. And when you try and penetrate that in any way with actual facts, like actual reality, they kind of freak out. And so they're going to go on and on about this fact stuff, whatever. But here's the deal. They got a mandate. MAGA got a mandate from one Donald Trump. And the media can't quite handle it. Maybe Mika's going after her. Maybe she needs to go after a whole lot of other people. Maybe I would actually even support that. I think they need to actually totally reconstruct who they are and think about their values, because their values are not very aligned with, say, the American culture's values. And that's why you have things like this report coming out of Blue Rose Research, which is a Democrat data firm, really, really prestigious Democrat data firm. And what did they find? If everybody had actually shown up to vote, Donald Trump would have won by more. The margin would have been even greater in this election cycle. So think about that, all right? Think about that. It would have been worse for them. This was definitely a mandate. Joy Behar over on The View can sit there and say, well, you know, I don't think it was. Oh, yeah, it was. And Donald Trump has the ball now. He's taking it and he's running it all the way into the end zone. Balance in Nature is one of our great sponsors on the show. Please make sure that you take a look at them over at balanceinnature.com. And if you're interested in getting any, make sure you use my code word Trish. That gets you the 35% off plus free shipping and a money-back guarantee. You can also call them at 1-800-246-8751, 1-800-246-8751. I'm getting better every day, even though I had a terrible cold a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still stuck with a little bit of a remnants of it. But I actually credit these guys because I think that having taken my vitamin D, my vitamin C every day for so long this year allowed me to only get one cold. Normally I get like 6 of them. So, you know, something to be said for that, I would say. And also I'm getting better. I just always, good thing I wasn't an opera singer after all, right? You know, good thing I just have to talk for a living. Anyway, Balance in Nature, check them out, balanceinnature.com with code word Trish. I don't know if you guys saw this, but there's a band out of Boston called Dropkick Murphys, and I've always really liked them, you know, because they're like sort of super Irish, and they get a lot of sort of Celtic music woven into their tunes, and the music itself is very sort of, you know, for me anyway, traditional and inspiring, well, you know, current, etc. So I was a little disappointed to see this. They kind of had a major case of TDS, if you would, live on stage there, and it's like, why? On St. Patrick's Day, do you have to go there? And you know, you're an entertainer. If you want to be a politician, be a politician. Conor McGregor wants to be a politician, okay? You know, he was an entertainer. He was a fighter. Now he wants to be a politician in Ireland. Leave it to those guys. Why do you have to get suddenly political? Let's take a look at what the singer from the Dropkick Murphys band had to say on stage there just last night on St. Patrick's Day, nonetheless.
Secondly, you think there's anything less I'd rather be talking about than that orange asshole? I'd rather be playing music. However, these are the times we are in. And as a patriotic American, we feel it's our duty to speak up with whatever platform we have. So if you don't like it, you certainly don't have to agree. But know this, we mean it from the bottom of our heart, okay? Anyway, this one's a song about all the rich billionaire oligarch that are out there. Sorry, kids, sorry, kids, sorry. Oh my God, I got a knot here. My mother's friend, Sister Mary Adele. Oh my, who's got rosary beads? I gotta say a bunch of Hail Marys. Oh my God, I dropped the C word in front of a nut. Oh my God. And with that, that's what you get when you get me talking about that guy. I'm sorry. My apologies, eternal.
Oh my gosh. So it all started because there was a fan in the crowd that was wearing a Trump hat. Make America Great Again. And the singer like flips out on him. It's like, haven't we gotten beyond that? Aren't we in a new world now, guys? Like, I thought that we couldn't just cancel half the country anymore. Because Donald Trump won. And according to the research I just showed you, he would have won by even more if the Democrats had actually showed up to vote. You know, and I don't know about Dropkick Murphys. I won't be so excited to listen to their music next time or support them in any way. They run the risk, right, of becoming like the next Jack Black. Remember when he did this and he actually had to pull his tour? He went off tour because of this. I remember. It was last summer. Take a look.
Don't miss Trump next time.
Whoa. Okay, so that was a really gross, violent thing to say and really unnecessary. And yes, he had to shut down his tour as a result. So like I said, like, leave it to the politicians. And if you want to entertain, entertain. And then if you're an entertainer who wants to go into politics, then, you know, actually bite the bullet and do it. That's what one Irishman, Conor McGregor, is doing. He stopped by the White House yesterday, and I just thought what he had to say was really worth hearing, because I think it resonates here at home with all of us. But I have some special intel on this because I've spent a lot of time in Ireland, and you know, I get the sense that this is going to become a bigger and bigger and bigger issue over the next couple of years. So this is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. You know, we've seen it all over Europe. It's becoming an issue now in Ireland. I don't know how much it's recognized. He has his own issues. McGregor does. Look, you know, he's certainly talking the talk right there, but I think that he's got his own challenges and past in Ireland that makes him a somewhat difficult ambassador for this message. But the message really is exactly what he stated, in that the Irish people are so proud of their culture, and they'll share their culture willingly because they are the most generous, most incredible, lovely, open people I think you'll ever meet. But simultaneously, they really hold their culture dear, and it's important to them because it got taken away, let's be very clear, by the British, and they had to fight pretty hard to get it back. And so they may not even fully understand all that's happening, although you could blame Great Britain again, because they're the ones that are sending all the migrants over into Northern Ireland, and they're just bleeding down into Dublin and throughout the rest of the country. Although you go out to the country, it's not so bad yet, but the cities, whether it be Belfast or Dublin, are really facing these challenges. And I just, as an observer, saw it, felt it, and I am hearing more and more, sort of anecdotally. I played some sound for you the other day of a woman in Dublin complaining because her child was the only one that actually spoke English, or Irish, right? They weren't even speaking Irish there, spoke English in her class there in Dublin. So the demographics are shifting and changing in a pretty spectacular way. And while the Irish are certainly open to it, I worry that this could be like another Sweden situation, because you've got a population that's just, you know, arms outstretched, let me help you, you know, identify you, whatever, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and it's like you can't wear a mini skirt, and you know, your girls can't go walk home at night, etc. And or you can't wear, say, the Irish flag on your shirt. My Swedish friend just told me, you can't wear your Swedish flag out in Sweden now because it's too dangerous. Well, what a shame. It's your own country, for goodness sake. So they are going to confront these challenges more and more. There's one other story I wanted to get to because it's a little bit about our world over here in streaming. The Daily Wire CEO has departed. Jeremy Boring is leaving the company, which kind of surprised me because he's been there really since the get-go. He's stepping down. The news was first reported by Axios, actually. He started the company, I think, with Ben Shapiro, however many years ago, maybe somewhere around, when did Ben leave Breitbart? Maybe around 2016 or so. And it's been enormously successful, right? You think about the Ben Shapiro show, you think about Candace Owens, who was there for a number of years, Brett Cooper, who's amazing, and I think now just started her own channel. A lot of wonderful talent over there. Michael Knowles, for example, just great cast of characters. And Jeremy has been very instrumental in building up the resources and the creative side of that business. They've even gotten into film production, which is just amazing. But you know, I would say that he's had a huge, I stand corrected, not 2016, 2015 is when they started that business. They had $4.7 million in seed money, and they just were able to build a huge empire, really, which has been, in my estimation, very helpful for the conservative movement. And they've embraced a lot of different conservative ideologies over there. I'd say Shapiro is very, very different from, say, a Candace Owens. And then you have Brett. Again, these people are no longer there, but Brett Owens, who really embraced that younger demographic and I think got younger kids excited about politics. And so Jeremy's leaving. It's sad to see. He did leave a note to staff saying that he's going to remain with the company in an advisory role. He's going to continue to host Daily Wire Backstage. So he'll still be a talent on there with Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, and Andrew Klavan. He's going to focus his time outside of that on some creative projects, including the completion of Daily Wire's TV series. I didn't realize it had a TV series. I do know that they have some media ventures vis-a-vis the film industry, and Jeremy himself comes with a film production background. I think he thought about a lot of things really smart and really recognized an opportunity early on. So I think it's somewhat sad to see him go. He's been such a generator in some ways of the commercial side of the business, right? Recognizing how you take the creativity of these streamers, etc., and you start to have more of a voice in culture because you're there, you're having a presence, say, for example, in movies or in other kinds of documentaries, etc. So he has certainly done a lot as a publisher, but who knows? We'll see what is in store for him. This Brett Cooper just went out on her own. I don't even know if her channel is actually up and running just yet. She probably has a non-compete of some sort, but she left Daily Wire. She was one of the people that Jeremy Boring brought in.
Hey guys, some of you have heard the rumors online, and the rumors are mostly true. Today, December 10th, will be my last day hosting the comment section and working for the Daily Wire. It is not true that I am being forced out. It was my own choice to leave. And believe me, this is bittersweet. I have had the most unbelievable 3 years helping to craft the show, building this community, and telling stories and sharing the truth every day. Through the comment section, you all have made me braver, more articulate, more thoughtful, more hopeful than I could have ever imagined. And I'm grateful that we spent this time together. And I'm grateful that the Daily Wire...
Forgive me, we misspelled his name. Let's go to another lower on that. It's Jeremy, spelled B-O-R-E-I-N-G. So Jeremy Boring leaving Daily Wire. I'm sure he's got great stuff lined up. And if not, maybe we should reach out to him here on the Trish Regan Show. He's definitely a creative guy. Anyway, we'll look forward to seeing him on camera on his continued platform there on Daily Wire. But it's kind of a loss. I feel bad for those guys because I think he had a good head for business, which you need. It's not all creativity. You need a little business head now and then. Speaking of needing a head for business, reminder, go and check out my 76 research, code word dollar. Invest. You know what? If you've got the time horizon, you got everything, okay? And if you don't have the time horizon, look at our income builder portfolio. The income builder portfolio at 76 Research, which is designed for people who are trying to play things more conservatively, as well as the inflation protection portfolio. We do have a new idea that we just published yesterday, so I encourage you to get it. Go to 76 Research, use my code word dollar. The other thing I can't let you forget, because gold just keeps going up and away, right? I try and buy it when it's down, like I said. But call these guys over at American Hartford Gold. They'll help you walk you through it. Text Trish, my name, to 65532, up to $15,000 in free silver right now, up to $15,000 in free silver. It is so good to have you here. As always, even though I'm traveling, I'm here with you. I never miss it. Thank you for your patience today. As we got on air a little bit later than expected, we're still watching for the JFK stuff. We'll see if anything interesting comes of that, and I will be back with you here tomorrow. Don't forget to hit the bell when you subscribe.